Hello. So today we're joined by Kim-adele Randall. Introducing just quickly here, Kim started with an MVQ in hairdressing, and to the chagrin of those around her in the working environment, no degree. But soon went on to become head of sales at Sage. She was the COO of CPP Group PLC. She was Director of Operations for Barclays Bank, COO for Payplan, and an Interim Director of the British Business Bank. After that, since 2018, she's been a business transformation consultant with her own group, Authentic Achievements, and most recently did a TEDx talk in Doncaster in December last year entitled Turn Your Fear into Hope. We have spoken before, but this is obviously the first episode of Wotter Future. So I'm really so grateful you can join us, Kim-adele. Thank you so much.
I'm so privileged to be here. Thank you. And what an honour to be your first guest.
Here we go. Someone had to.
Well, hopefully I will do you justice.
Well, yes, I hope I do as well. So it should all be good. But yeah, that's quite a list of things that you've achieved there. I mean, I think we can definitely say there's some authentic achievements in there.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I was really lucky. I was given lots of opportunity, and it was funny. For a lot of years, I thought my background in hairdressing was my Achilles heel. I spent years thinking that they were going to, when they put me on the board, that they were going to go, "Oh my goodness, we put the hairdresser on the board. That's really awkward. Let's get her off." And it never happened. And I'm still on boards today. But it was my fear, and yet now what I realise is, one of my greatest lessons in leadership was back when I was hairdressing, because what they did as a hairdresser is they taught you to listen, to really understand what the person wants, to do your very best to help them to achieve it, and to have them leave you feeling the best version of themselves. Well, if we do that as leaders, the rest is easy. If we listen to our people to understand what's important to them, if we help them to achieve it, and if we leave them with a feeling of increase from every interaction with us, then they're going to want to work with us forever. And so inadvertently, because people are like, how have you been so successful? I was like, I don't really know. I don't really know. But actually, and I did used to joke, I've got hairdresser face. People will tell me literally anything, and I've made a career out of it. You go in and people will literally come and tell you anything. But that's how you learn. All the silly things we were doing in organisations, all the ways we were getting in our own way, all the times we weren't really understanding what it was like to be there for our people or for our clients. And so you get to fix them. So if you listen to them, then you get to fix them. But also, they start to believe that you want to make a difference because you're listening. And it sounds so simple, but I think, unfortunately, it's one of the skills that we've lost the art of. We no longer listen to understand. We listen to interject, to kind of get our point over, because we've got really uncomfortable with silence. And we know the minute somebody stops speaking, we're going to be silent, or we have to say something. So we start to think about what we're going to say rather than listen to what they're telling us. So you end up, I don't know if you've ever done that, where you listen to people having a conversation and think, but you're not answering what they've just said. You're answering what they said 5 minutes ago, because you've not kept up with kind of where they were going.
Absolutely, it's something I've always said with people I've worked with, that particularly in sales, you're trying to understand in a similar manner as you're saying there with hairdressers. You're trying to understand what the other person wants, and then whether what you've got is a fit. But I always say that when you let people stop talking, if you leave them for a couple of seconds, then they'll tell you what they really think. Because they need to think of something very quickly, so they're generally very, very honest. So they tell you one thing, and then you just give them a second, and then they tell you the thing that's really important, and then that's it. That's where you really need to be.
I love it. That's so true. There was, back in the 80s, there was a model that they used to use called the 5 Why theory.
Yes.
And the idea was that the first thing you say is the thing you think is going to be accepted. But if you then go, oh, that's interesting. So what makes that so important? By the time you've dug it down to the 5th level, you really get to the crux of what it's like, what's really going on in the world. But because we do, don't we? We kind of we kind of say what we think is going to be acceptable, particularly if it's something we don't really want to discuss. It's like, I don't really want to dig into that. So I'm just going to say something that that allows me not to go any further. I mean, I was talking to a gentleman the other day. We were saying one of the worst words that you hear in business, a 4-letter word that really should terrify the living daylights of people, is the word fine. Because we never say fine when we're fine. We mean we're fed up, insecure, neurotic and emotional, everything, but fine. But what it allows us to do is move on. Because if I say, oh, I'm fine, you can go, oh, great. You don't have to ask me anymore. I don't have to tell you anymore. So my world can still have imploded. You get to meander off and like get on with your day, and nothing gets changed, nothing gets fixed. And you see it all over the place in organisations where they're inadvertently missing those signals that say it's anything but fine here. Here's where we need to focus and to ask better questions and just swap judgment for curiosity. So we're very quick, I think, as human beings, and we have to be. Our brains were designed back when we were cavemen. And so we had to make a very quick decision whether or not it was fight or flight, because things were trying to kill us. And therefore we still do that now. So people say something and we immediately make a judgment. That's right, that's wrong, I agree, I disagree. But we do that. And we do it to ourselves as well. And I think if we can learn to swap that judgment for curiosity, that's like, oh, okay, I'd never thought of it like that. Could you help me understand how you came to that conclusion? I may still not agree at the end, but I will have learned something on the journey. But equally, I try doing it with myself when I'm like, well, I think that's wrong. So, okay, that's curious, Kim. What makes you so sure that that's wrong? Because again, it just triggers a different part of our brain for us to start opening up a little bit wider. Because I think the research shows that we on average use less than 10% of our actual brain power. Terrifying.
It's crazy, isn't it? And what could we achieve if we did? I mean, I think this brings us. I think we're sort of starting to answer the question, but the first question that we're going to be asking people on this podcast, and kind of trying to make a habit of doing it each week, is what is the biggest issue affecting work right now? What today? February 2023. What's the biggest sort of issue that we have? Is it what you were already saying there, or is there a bigger?
I think for me personally, and I've seen this for decades, and unfortunately, it's still the biggest challenge. Our biggest issue is our ability to understand and work with people. So I was talking to a client the other day, and he's like, business is really hard, and I was like, it is. But talk to me about what that's like in your world. And he said, well, I've got the board, and I was like, well, they're people. I've got clients, people, colleagues, people. I've got business partners and suppliers, also people. The regulators, they're all people. So actually, what you've got is a people issue. So let's understand what that is, and let's unpack that a little bit. Because if we don't get good at understanding people and what's important to them, and we're not going to be able to create that connection. I remember many years ago when I was head of sales for Sage, much to my boss's, I'm going to go with surprise, but at the time I think dismay might have been more like it. I stood up at this conference and said, the first thing you need to understand is nobody wants our product. Probably not what you want to hear from the head of sales. What? And I said, you need to understand, nobody wants the product. They need the product. If we don't understand what we're working with, we're never going to connect with people. So unless they're an accountant, nobody went into business to do accounts. Nobody went, oh, go and do this.
I think most accountants didn't go into business to do accounts either.
I said, so the reality is they need it, because if they don't do their accounts, then they're not conforming with the legal requirements, and the business can't survive. I said, but there's no point trying to create an excitement in them. I talked to people that were like, they want to be the next Apple. I was like, no one is going to sleep out overnight outside HMV for the chance to get the latest version of our accounting software. And if they did, they're possibly a serial killer. So we probably don't want to encourage that. I said, so you're never going to create a want in them because they don't have a want. What they have is a need. So don't try and make it exciting. Try and solve what it's going to be. I said, so for them, it's going to be a case of, if your accounts currently take you 5 hours a week, what would you do with the time if I could make the same piece of work now only take you 1 hour? What are you going to do with those 4 hours? How are you going to invest those in your business? Oh, they love to chat about that. Because that's amazing. That's what I want. Now I'm over here, and it's a bit like, I've worked in financial services for years. It's like, nobody wants the mortgage. They want the house. They don't want the loan. They want the car. I said, so what you can't do is start trying to talk at people from your perception of what you want. You want them to have the software. You want them to have the mortgage. They don't. And the same is true, I think, in businesses with our people, is we come at it from what we want. We want our clients to buy our stuff. We want our people to want to work for us. We want our people to do all the things that we've asked them to do. But have we taken a moment to go, what do they want? And what are they getting out of this interaction? And does that feel mutually beneficial? Because the minute it doesn't, it all breaks. The minute it's not mutually beneficial, then you're going to lose a talent, you're going to lose clients, you're going to stifle your opportunity to grow. But we have become extremely fearful, in my opinion, of feedback. So as leaders, we don't like to ask for feedback because I believe one of our biggest fears is that the awful things that we say about ourselves, that we project out to the world and say that everybody else is saying about us, may well get played back to us. And then we're going to have to do something about it. Whereas if I don't ever ask, I don't have to act. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's really interesting. I noticed certainly with crossover with what we do at Wotter, that fear of feedback and truth, sort of just hiding behind some kind of normally very imperfect shield. That no, everything's okay, nothing can hurt me if I don't ask. Then this holds massive organisations back just as much as it holds small teams back, because you've got incredible people at all levels of the company, and they may not be the most experienced or the most well trained or the most decorated with their learning sort of credentials, but they've got a perspective that you don't have. They've got something that they know more about than you know about. And I've always believed, I know you talk about this on your own Authentic Leaders podcast, that actually it's the role of the leader to go and find out what everyone else thinks, not to go and project what they think. And if you can get all of that sort of information together, then the job of the leader is to curate the best way forward out of everything that's presented to them. If you think of Lord Nelson on the Victory, he can only be in one place on the ship at one time, but everything's happening everywhere else. You've got the riggings going on, you've got the people up at the top, watching out for enemies, you've got people looking after, cannons, you've got the food, you've got one person can't know everything. And so his job is to find out all of those things and then say, okay, well, we've got a bit of an issue over there, so we need to go and fix that issue. This thing's doing really well. How can we make sure that we keep doing that? And that's the important thing, is the learning process that allows you to lead, rather than the coming in and just sort of waving your flag around and going, no, we're going to go do this.
Yeah, that's so true. It's about that. It's about facilitating the way forward. Because actually, if you've got all the ideas, you've got a problem. Because you can't know it all. You just can't, and you become your own single point of failure. So it's about finding that bravery of going, I don't know, what do you think? Mm-hmm. And being comfortable with that, inviting people into the challenge. There's a fascinating book that was written by a guy called John Voss, and it's called Never Split the Difference. And he was a hostage negotiator. So there was high stakes if he got it wrong. And he was talking about the fact that one of the biggest problems was he he often would need things from the people that are the hostage takers. He said, the minute you ask them for something, then reciprocity kicks in. So they now expect something in return. He said, so instead, invite people into the problem. So you don't ask them for anything. Instead, you'd say things like, oh, so you want £2 million for this person, but right now, I don't even have any proof that that person's alive. So I wonder how I'm going to make that happen. He's not asked them for anything. He's just posed a question. He said, but immediately they leap in with the, oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I could give you proof. Oh, that'd be lovely. Ask for it. So actually, he said, all of a sudden people start to join in. So a lot of it, I think, is in our languaging. And, one of the things that I found in leading for years was, I believe my role was to help people to understand our destination. So, it's like we're going to Edinburgh. And that's where we're heading. And we need to go to Edinburgh because this is how it's going to impact the business and the organisation. How do we get to Edinburgh? No, I'm up for debate. Let's have a discussion. What are all the options that we could go through? Because if we know all of those, then if something happens to us on our journey, so we thought we were going to go on the train and there we go, there's a train strike, so we're not anymore, then we already know what some of the other ways are in which we can do it. But it also allows people to recognise that actually it's not the mistake that defines us, it's what we do with the mistake. And if we can create that culture with people, then they will stop hiding things, because people hide things because they're scared. And they're scared of consequences because we've created an environment where they feel scared. That doesn't mean to say that there should never be a consequence, because if it's a bit like bringing up kids. If there's no consequence, then anything could happen, and they'll probably get really badly hurt. But it's about saying, actually, always bring me. I say this to scholars: bring me what the problem is, and together we'll find a solution. And I used that for 25 years at work. Bring me the problem, and together we'll find a solution. Because I'll never be upset with you for making a mistake. We'll be upset with you if you hide it or if you lie to me, because you don't give me a chance to help you. And you must feel dreadful. We all know if we've done something we're not supposed to have done. And it eats you up inside, isn't it? You're kind of like waiting for the moment of reveal when you get found out for whatever it was that you did.
Hauled into the headmaster's office.
Sat down and I sometimes do it now. I'm 50 this year. And still I think very carefully, because if I ever swore in front of my parents, and I think the last time I was about 25, they would still ground me today. I'm 50 and I live in a different house. You can't ground me anymore. But that consequence is still there.
Yes, that's interesting. I mean, those patterns, I think it's probably worth touching on that. Those patterns are so ingrained in the way that we, we're brought up. And as you say, you've got to provide boundaries to children, because you have to, share some of your wisdom so that they don't get hurt. But at the same time, if you're constantly kind of stopping experimental behaviour, and the fear of the experimental behaviour is that you're going to be reprimanded in some way, then we carry this through into our adult lives, and it affects us every day. I mean, I think we were talking just briefly there about the sort of fear of failure and how powerful that can be for people, particularly when it comes even to owning up. One of the things that I've always done with people that work for me is actually say, look, I expect you to make mistakes, because if you don't make mistakes, you're not taking any risks. You're not pushing yourself. You're doing everything entirely within your comfort zone. I'm not interested in your comfort zone. I'm interested in how amazing you can be, how far you can push yourself, and what we can achieve if you do that. If that means we screw something up along the way, we screw it up along the way. We've got boundaries. There are things that we, like, don't screw up a client, but otherwise, like, let's go push those boundaries, and let's own it when we do make a mistake. So I think failure is just a word that means I'm on the way to success. And if you don't have failure, you're not really succeeding in much.
And it's so true. I think it was Edison, wasn't it, who said, I didn't find one way to do the light bulb. I found 10,000 ways not to do the light bulb.
Yes.
So within the constant iteration, it was in the constant learning. And I think it is, we've got to take risks. We want to take calculated risks where possible.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't keep taking those risks, if we don't push ourselves out of our comfort zone and into that challenge space, then we don't grow, and neither does our community, our society, or our organisation. But again, we've got to, if we're asking people to move into that space, we've got to create that bit for them. And you mentioned earlier my TED Talk. Part of that is the fact that fear is just imagined. So everything that we're fearful of hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. We've imagined it, we've created it in exactly the same brain as everything we're hopeful for. We also imagine it, we also create it. So same brain, same person, and yet we choose to believe that what we're fearful of is more likely and more credible than what we're hopeful for. But imagine if we didn't. Imagine if we looked at it and went, okay, so what if we did succeed? What if we did make it? You talked about my bizarrely my bizarre career that has been very varied. And I was fortunate to have that based on the fact every time anyone gave me an opportunity, I would go, what's the worst that can happen? And can I live with that? And very often that what's the worst can happen would be, well, I'm not going to die. Yeah, okay, I can live with that. I can live with the risk. So we can get to it. But I found that really helped me just push through those boundaries that we sometimes encase ourselves in. And inadvertently, therefore, we demonstrate those to our people and we encase them in it. And we do all of our thinking from a selfish viewpoint very often. I again sat in one organisation where they were debating for quite a while as to why we were seeing a decline in a particular product range. And I was like, can I just ask a question? I've only been here a week and a half, so to give the dim girl question, but do we think we're stupid or do we think the customer's stupid? What do you mean? And I said, well, we're debating why the customer is no longer using paper pay slips, and yet we use electronic pay slips because they're environmentally more friendly, they're more economical, and they're more efficient and effective. So either we think our decisioning was wrong, or we think the customer is stupid and therefore they're going to continue to pay for things that are environmentally unfriendly, less effective and more costly. But both of those can't be true.
Yes.
So how often do we question the opposite of what we're telling ourselves? How often do we go, could the opposite be true? Whatever it is I'm convinced about today, could the opposite be true? And we see that in conflict, which unfortunately is a big challenge these days in organisations, is managing that conflict. And most conflict, in my opinion, comes from misunderstanding, misinformation, or miscommunication. And once we start to question to understand where it's coming from, we can find often that people are violently agreeing. They just are using different words. They're just like have come at it from a slightly different viewpoint. And so we waste so much time. And I think that's probably one of the big challenges in organisations is we don't whatever time we have, we fill. And therefore we put off having conversations that we think might be difficult or challenging. We put off seeking to understand the other person's point of view because we think it's going to take longer. But actually, once you do that, it's amazing what you can learn. And I remember in one organisation that I went in, and one of the things I had to do was a redundancy programme for them, which are never a nice thing to do. And I remember the day before we were going to go and tell the staff, being sat in front of the board, and they said, Kim, are we prepared? And I was like, well, we're as prepared as we can ever be. And you looked horrified, like, should we wait? Should we put it off? And I was like, no, what I mean by that is I've planned for everything I can plan for, with the exception of one thing. Tomorrow, we are going to tell 1,800 people that their job is at risk. I don't know what that information is going to add to whatever burden they're currently carrying. Mm-hmm. I can't possibly know that. There's too many of them. All I can do is be comfortable with the uncomfortable and hold the space for them that says, tell me how it feels, tell me what's going on in your world. Sit with them in that uncomfortableness and help them find a path through. Because when we're in those moments, we're in chaos. And the last thing anybody needs when they're in chaos is for you to join them there. Mm-hmm. Now, we're all in chaos. What they need is for you to be the lifeboat that they can get to on the other side. And sometimes that means just sitting with them and letting them get through it, rather than going, oh, it's messy and it's emotional and I don't really like that. It's not my job. Because we don't teach the soft skills anymore. And it has always made me smile that we call them soft skills, and yet people find them so hard.
Yes, and so such a barrier to really what we're trying to achieve. So just to sort of briefly sum up what we were sort of talking about there is that a lot of interpersonal communication is ultimately the crux of what's holding businesses back at the moment. It's the biggest issue that we face. That was your answer to the question. We've gone through. This is about sharing information, getting feedback, understanding that feedback, really listening to what people are trying to tell you as opposed to just what you want to hear, and planning, but also not being afraid of risk, and just kind of going and living with that kind of interpersonal relationship and treating people like humans, but just watching the sort of situation evolve. I wanted to move on in the subject of hope and your TED talk into the sort of second question as part of this podcast, is that in 5 years' time, let's say that we've all gone to the Kim-adele Randall school and we've identified the problem, we've fixed the problem, we've got much better interpersonal communication, we've got managers listening to the people in their team, we've got people in the team listening to the managers, we've got maybe we don't have any managers at all, I don't know. Whatever that looks like, that 5 years time, what can we achieve there? What should we expect if we really take some steps towards this?
I think we step into the art of the possible. We step into that space that says, actually, all the time and energy that we currently waste on conflict, misunderstanding and miscommunication can all be directed at where do we want to go? Where could we go? What could we do? Because actually then, if we're in a place where, if we all think for a moment, the last time we felt listened to and respected and understood, how did that feel? That's like us on Barocca. That's us on our best day. It's like we're going to be all out. So imagine we've got a whole organisation that is on their best day and they're focusing outwardly on what next rather than inwardly on why now. So I think, what we're able to then do is really start to think of what's the next iteration. So whatever we're doing today, and I think we often think that the world is going to be about revolution. I think it's evolution. It's about moving into that. They used to call it constant improvement, but personally, I think it's constantly iterating. It's constantly looking at things that are going on and going, how might I be just a little bit better? How might this organisation be just a little bit better? How might we be able to do those parts? And then what else is going on? If we've got more time, we can have better conversations with our clients about what's really important to you. And also, if you could do magic, where would you be? Because it's about educating the people that we support as well, to get them into that mindset of going, yeah, but if you could do magic, all the reasons you're going to tell me it can't happen, it doesn't matter because we're doing magic right now. So does it mean say it has to be plausible? It just means we're just for a moment, let's start with, if we could do magic, if we could wave a wand, what would we be doing? What would it be looking like? And kind of moving people back into that passionate curiosity. We look at when we were children, when we were young children, we didn't have that fear. Yeah, we did things as children that we would be overwhelmed with if we had to do today. You know, we learned how to walk. Could you imagine getting up tomorrow and having to learn how to walk? You're like, no, I can't do that. And yet, at our most vulnerable, we did that. We learned to do something that today would terrify and overwhelm us. And I, in my opinion, think it comes down to one thing in two parts, and it's belief. The first is kids believe they're just like us. So we can do it, so they think they can do it. And you know, anyone that's got children will probably have remembered those moments where it's like, me do becomes me did. That moment of like utopia when they were able to achieve it is one of the most amazing things to see. But the second thing is, I've yet to see a child learn to walk that doesn't have at least one adult nearby that's going, come on, you've got this. And so it pushes them to do something that we today might think was impossible for us to do. Imagine the future we have if the people that we work with were able to augment their own belief with ours and therefore focus on what could happen. Kids can take a cardboard box and turn it into a spaceship and they can go all over the place. Imagine that level of curiosity and belief in the world. It was hard to imagine exactly where we will be, but what an exciting place to be.
Absolutely, it's so powerful. You know, we've fallen into the trap really over the last kind of 50 years of really being very negative about the future. You know, it wasn't that long ago that the Hunger Games came out. We all believed the future would be we'll all just have to kill each other. And you know, at the moment, everyone's talking about The Last of Us. Well, we're all going to die, so screw it. You know, we've come out with this kind of negative idea that the future is not going to be better than it is now. But the future is going to be worse. And that seems to be the kind of pervasive idea. And if you look back at the kind of 30s and the 40s, you know, the streamline movement, the move toward all of the idea of nuclear power and what that could do, and you know, the excitement around computers and the problems that would solve, and everyone couldn't wait for the future. The prevailing idea was the future is going to be better than it is now. And I think that kind of societal idea pushes people on an individual level to go, great, how am I going to be a part of it? Like, how am I going to learn, you know, about that? Not, you know, oh God, here's another tool that's come along. We're all going to lose our jobs because ChatGPT exists. I mean, at no point has any human technology removed jobs from the world. We've got more job opportunities and more jobs in the world now than we've had at any point in human history. And yet, when you know the Industrial Revolution happened, everyone said, "Well, there's not going to be enough jobs to go around." When computers came out, computers are going to take our jobs. And you know, the world just moves on and it evolves, and we create what we need to in the world. Because you know, the calculator didn't ruin maths. You know, everyone, you know, to put the kind of modern idea on what everyone's saying about AI. You know, the calculator came along, and everyone went, "Oh, well, that's cheating, isn't it?" You know, what's going to happen to all of the people who can, you know, do tough sums in their head? Gosh, you know, what a skill, an old skill. It's going to be ruined. We're not going to need it anymore. But actually, what happened is the field of maths just exploded. It went, oh wow, now we can do all this stuff, you know, that we couldn't do before. And this is, you know, an idea. If we can take that into our own personal lives, then that pushes us constantly to say, right, what next? What next? You know, if we can learn, you know, we can identify something, a response in ourselves to a situation, the way that we, you know, handled it, be it, you know, interpersonal at work or at home, wherever, and we say, I could have done that better. How do I do that better? How do I make sure tomorrow I'm better than I was today? Because tomorrow is going to be better. Tomorrow's the future. Tomorrow's, you know, I think that's a really powerful.
It's so true, and I love that. I think, you know, every day, our role is to be a better version of ourselves than we were yesterday. My grandparents gave me two great pieces of advice, and between them, I think it's really given me a way to live. So my nan's advice was, every day's a school day. Mm-hmm. So in every day you should learn something. Learn to do it a little bit better, learn to do it a little bit different, learn something you've never done before. And my granddad's advice was, live each day as if it's your last, and one day you'll be right. And bless his heart, he's so true. But I think in that it was about not putting off until tomorrow something that you can change today. So that you're constantly becoming the best version of yourself, and realizing that the only person you have to judge yourself against is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is only one you. There isn't, nobody else out there is you. So you can't compare yourself to them because you're not the same. And once we get to that and go, it's quite liberating. And I think it was Pablo Picasso who said that the meaning of life, the purpose of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. So we're all here because we have a gift, and then our role is to share that gift. And when we all get to that space, I think that's where the real ingenuity happens. And you're right, we've had millennia of fear that the future isn't ours, isn't promised, and isn't going to be as good as what we've got today. And yet when we look back, it's better than it's been before. And I think that is life, isn't it? Life often only makes sense in the rearview mirror. It only makes sense when we've gone through it. And if we could just hang on to that when we're in it, we can go, brighter days will come. Without rain, there's no rainbows. It's like we have to go through those parts to get to the promised land, I think.
Absolutely. No, I think that's quite an inspiring sort of vision of the future there. And I think you're right. There's an awful lot of truth to what you're saying. That ultimately, it's business is about people, work is about people. Most problems that people moan about at work are about people, one way or another. And so, if we can learn how to interact better, one of the things that I found quite revolutionary. I read The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, and it's a very, very interesting book about the sort of psychology of the way that different people think, particularly when it comes to how they deal with expectations placed on themselves or by others, which is from a sort of psychological perspective, it's a narrow look on someone's personality. There's an awful lot more that makes up a personality, and Gretchen herself knows this. It's not she's not trying to distill the entire human experience, but the thing that I really took away from it is, oh, wow, not everyone's like me. And it was a kind of like light bulb moment. It was a few years ago that, you kind of, we all go through life expecting that, well, I find this thing easy, so I think you're going to find it easy. Or I find this thing hard, and therefore I think you're going to find this thing hard. But actually we deal with things in different ways, and simply just accepting that someone else is not me. They don't need to be me. They don't need to think like me, but they've got something amazing.
Yeah.
What is it? Let's go find it. Let's go find it together if we need to.
Imagine what happens when we add the two, because I think we all have a natural talent, and that's the thing that comes really easy to us, and it, because of that, often doesn't feel very talented. One of mine was I can literally talk to anybody, but I thought, well, so can anybody. It's not hard to just say hello, is it? Until you see the people that can't. You see the people that they just can't, and then you're like, oh, how awful that! How awful that must be, because I hadn't realised that this was a gift. I just took it for granted because I can. But there's a million things I can't do that other people can do so beautifully, and I'm like, I would just love to be able to do what you can do. But actually, we can if we do it together.
That's it.
Because I can do this bit and you can do that bit, but together we will be so much more powerful. And I think that's we've first got to be able to get comfortable in admitting that we're not perfect. Mm-hmm. In fact, we are perfectly imperfect. And that is our true perfection, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant way to end the podcast there. I think it's been an absolute pleasure to discuss. The future of work. I often say we spend more time at work than we spend with our partners. It's crazy that we just kind of sleepwalk our way through it and spend a lot of our time wishing we weren't doing the things we were doing. So it's absolutely fantastic to be able to talk with you about that. And I'm so grateful for your experience and your wisdom and your knowledge. And thank you so much for being a part of the first episode.
Oh, thank you so much. It is always such a joy to chat to you. And I am so very honoured to have been your first guest. And I can't wait to hear the future guests you've got, because I think this is going to be a great debate to get started.
I hope so. We've got some amazing people lined up, and I really can't wait to really try and create this picture of, if we all put our mind to it, if we all put a concerted effort in, where will we be in 5 years' time? Because it could be amazing, and it should be amazing.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kim-adele. Really appreciate your time. Cheers.
Thank you.